The snow had begun to fall thickly over the dense forest, muffling the sounds of the world outside. The small cabin, nestled between towering pines, seemed almost swallowed by the winter night. Its windows were dark, its chimney long cold, and the surrounding trees leaned in like silent sentinels, keeping the secrets of decades past. Liam had arrived at the cabin by accident, or perhaps fate. The directions he had found online were vague, the reviews cryptic, warning travelers about its isolated location. But he had dismissed them as overactive imaginations. After all, he was a skeptic, a man of reason, and no ghost story would convince him otherwise. He carried only his backpack, a flashlight, and a camera to document the solitude he craved. The first step onto the snow-covered path toward the cabin sent a shiver through his spine, not from cold, but from the sense of being watched. The forest was unnervingly quiet, as if the trees themselves held their breath, waiting. The cabin door protested with a loud creak as Liam pushed it open. The interior was dark, dust motes swirling in the weak beam of his flashlight. He noted the furniture, worn but intact, the remnants of meals long gone, and a fireplace filled with cold ashes. The air smelled faintly of wood smoke and something else, something acrid and faintly metallic. As he explored, Liam felt the first prickles of unease. Shadows seemed to shift in the corners of his vision, the floorboards creaking though he hadn't stepped near them. He shook his head and laughed nervously, muttering that it was only the wind, or perhaps the settling of an old cabin. But deep down, a part of him wondered if there was more to the silence than mere emptiness. Hours passed. Liam had set up a small fire, trying to ward off the encroaching cold and the growing feeling of dread. Yet every crackle of the fire, every whistle of the wind through the cracks of the cabin, seemed to carry whispers, words he couldn't understand, but tones of warning, sorrow, and anger. He told himself it was his imagination, exhaustion playing tricks. But then he saw it. A figure in the corner of the room, a woman, pale, with hollow eyes, staring at him. He froze. The flashlight trembled in his hand. She did not move, yet her presence was undeniable, a weight pressing against the air. Liam tried to speak, but no sound came out. He blinked, and she was gone, leaving only the faint scent of rotting flowers behind. Night deepened, and with it, the cabin seemed to pulse with life. Objects shifted when he wasn't looking. The fireplace flickered, though no wind entered. The whispers grew louder, forming words now. "Leave before it finds you." Despite fear, Liam's curiosity overtook him. He needed to understand. He explored the cellar, descending into the damp, stone-walled chamber. The air was colder here, almost impossibly so, and every step he took echoed like a scream. There, in the corner, was an old diary, its pages yellowed and brittle. He opened it. The entry spoke of a tragedy long forgotten, a family who had lived here, tormented by a spirit that had claimed their souls one by one. The final entry was smudged, almost illegible. "It waits in the shadows, patient, until another comes." The hairs on his neck stood as a sudden movement caught his eye. The same woman from before, closer now, her eyes wide with despair. She whispered, her lips barely moving. "It knows you're here." Liam tried to flee, but the cabin itself seemed to resist. Doors slammed shut, windows rattled violently. Shadows coiled around him like living things. His flashlight flickered, casting distorted reflections that multiplied the ghostly figure endlessly around the room. Hours, or perhaps minutes, passed in chaos. Liam was disoriented, exhausted, and terrified. Then silence fell, a silence so deep it seemed to press into his skull. And in that silence, he heard a soft, cold voice behind him. "Welcome to eternity?" Shaking, Liam ran to the front door. It refused to budge, as though some invisible force held it shut. He pounded with all his strength, screaming, until finally the latch gave way. He stumbled outside into the freezing night, the snow now ankle-deep. Yet even as he ran through the forest, he felt the eyes of the cabin following him, shadows creeping along the tree line. The next day, he reached the nearest town, exhausted and nearly frozen. Locals listened in horror as he recounted the story, their expressions grave. They told him of a legend the cabin belonged to a family long gone, murdered by a malevolent spirit that never left. Those who stayed overnight never returned, or if they did, they were never the same. Liam shivered, realizing that he had only just survived. Weeks passed, yet the memories haunted him. Shadows seemed to follow him in his apartment. Objects moved slightly when he wasn't looking, and most disturbingly, he could hear whispers in the silence, soft and beckoning. "Come back." Unable to ignore the pool, Liam researched the cabin obsessively. He discovered that the spirit had been a woman, wronged and murdered centuries ago, her rage binding her to the place. Attempts to destroy or cleanse the cabin had failed, as the spirit drew strength from fear. Determined to end the terror, Liam returned at night, equipped with protective charms, salt, and a silver knife he hoped would work. The cabin appeared even more sinister under the pale moonlight, shadows crawling along the walls like fingers. He entered cautiously, each step echoing through the empty rooms. The whispers grew louder, forming words he could now understand. "Why have you returned?" A figure appeared, more solid this time, her eyes burning with anger. Liam recited protective incantations, and for a moment, the room shook violently, the wind screaming through the cracks. The ghost let out a shriek that pierced through his very bones. Suddenly, the cabin fell silent again. Liam looked around. The furniture was still, the shadows receded, and the fireplace remained cold. He thought he had succeeded. But then, the diary he had found earlier slammed open by itself, pages flipping to the final entry. "It waits, and now it has you." The room grew icy cold, and Liam realized too late that the spirit had not left. It had only marked him, binding his soul to the cabin's dark history. He tried to run, but the walls stretched, the doors disappeared, and the shadows coalesced into a figure that reached for him with long, clawed hands. His scream echoed into the forest, muffled by the snow, until only silence remained. The cabin stood still, as if nothing had occurred. Yet a faint glow shimmered in the window, and a new whisper joined the eternal chorus. "Another soul, to join us." 2 years later, hikers would occasionally find the cabin in the forest, untouched by time, its windows dark and forbidding. Those who peeked inside swore they saw a lone man wandering endlessly among the shadows, muttering to himself, his eyes hollow. And sometimes, if the wind blew just right, they could hear whispers on the night air, carrying the warning, "Do not enter," or become part of the echoes. The cabin waits, patient, eternal, and the snow continues to fall, covering the forest in silence, hiding the horrors within.